أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Surah 76, Ad-Dahr, Introduction. Title. This surah has two titles, Ad-Dahr and Al-Insan, and both words occur in its opening verse. Period of revelation. Most Quran scholars, Al-Zamakhshari, Al-Razi, Al-Bedawi, Al-Nisapuri, Ibn Kathir, and many others, take it to be a Makkan surah, while Al-Alusi refers to this as the consensus view. Some Quran commentators are of the opinion that the whole surah was revealed in Medina, and some others think that it is part Makkan and part Medina. For the latter, verses 8 to 10 of this surah were sent down in Medina, while the rest were revealed in Makkah. In terms of its contents and stylistic features, it differs from the Medinan surahs. On reflection, it appears to be Makkan and seems to have been revealed at the same time as verses 1 to 7 of Surah Al-Mudaththir. Verses 8 to 10 of this surah appear to be its essential part, and there is nothing to suggest that the verses preceding and following these had come down some 15 to 16 years earlier, or that verses 8 to 10 were inserted into the surahs later on. What has lent credence to the view that it is a Medinan surah is the report by Ata on the authority of Ibn Abbas. According to this report, Hassan and Hussein once fell ill, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, and many companions called on their father Ali. Some suggested that he make a vow to Allah for their recovery. Accordingly, Ali, Fatima, and their maid Fiza vowed that if Allah cured Hassan and Hussein, they would fast for 3 days. By God's grace they recovered, and all three started fasting. As Ali did not have any food in his house, he took 3 sa of barley on loan. However, another report clarifies that he had earned this grain through manual labor. On the first day, as they sat down to break their fast, a needy person came and begged for food. They gave him all the food they had and went to bed after drinking some water. The same thing happened the next day, as they gave all their food to an orphan and again only had water. On the 3rd day, when they were about to break their fast, a prisoner asked for food, and they gave him everything. On the 4th day, Ali, along with both his sons, called on the Prophet, peace be upon him, who noted their miserable condition on account of their hunger. When he went to Ali's house, he saw Fatima suffering from pangs of hunger too. Tears welled up in his eyes on seeing all this. It was then that Gabriel visited him and gave him the glad tidings that Allah had felicitated him regarding his blessed family. The archangel then recited the whole surah to him. According to Ibn Mihran, he recited only verses 5 to 31. However, Ibn Mardawayh narrates Ibn Abbas's report, which says only verse 8 was sent down in the context of Ali and Fatima. It makes no reference to the above incident. This story appears in Ali ibn Ahmad al-Wahdi's Tafsir al-Wasit, which is most probably used as a source by al-Zamakhshari, al-Razi, as well as by al-Nisapuri. The chain of narrators for this story is extremely unreliable, and moreover, with scrutiny the text appears equally incredible. Had a single person begged for food, why was he given the food of all the 4 or 5 members of the household? Even after giving him adequate food, the household could have shared the remainder. Equally unbelievable is the version that Ali and Fatima, who possessed insights into matters of faith, preferred to allow their weak, ill children to starve, considering it an act of virtue. Moreover, prisoners were never allowed to beg for food in Islamic history. They were incarcerated by the state, and it catered for their food and clothing. If a prisoner was placed under someone's custody, the custodian would be responsible for looking after him. It was unthinkable that a prisoner in Medina would have begged for food. Even if one overlooks all these flaws in the report and accepts it at face value, at most it tells us that when the Prophet's family member did this good act, Gabriel congratulated the Prophet, peace be upon him, informing him that Allah had approved of their good deed, for they had done is mentioned approvingly in this surah. However, this does not necessarily mean that this surah was revealed on that occasion. When a report says that a particular verse was sent down with a reference to a particular incident, it does not mean that their dates tally exactly. What the report signifies instead is that a particular incident is related to a certain verse. In his Al-Itqan, Al-Suyuti cites Ibn Taymiyyah's opinion. As reporters contend that a particular verse was occasioned by a certain incident, it may mean either its circumstantial setting or its relationship with a particular command, though it may have nothing to do with that incident. He has also quoted Badr al-Din Zarkashi's interpretation that features in his Al-Burhan fi Ulum al-Quran. It was customary on the part of the companions and the successors to speak of a verse in connection with a particular matter, signifying that a particular command is related to that. This does not mean that a particular matter caused the revelation of that verse, but only that a command is inferred from it. Subject matter and themes. The theme of this surah is to apprise man of his true position in this world. It further instructs him that if he realizes the true nature of his position well and behaves gratefully towards God, he will have a happy end. But if he takes to the path of unbelief, his end will be terrible. This theme also features in the longer surahs of the Quran, with its full details. In the early Makkan surahs, however, the same truth is presented in a pithy and a highly effective manner. Brief sentences befitting a proverbial saying are employed in these surahs. Firstly, man is reminded that at the first stage of conception he is unworthy of mention. He is created from the drop of an intermingling sperm, and even his mother is unaware of him at this point. No one could then say that this microscopic entity would grow one day into a human being, the supreme creature of God on earth. Next, man is warned that he has been created so that God might try him in this world. Accordingly, in contrast to other creatures, he is given certain faculties. He is granted life in order to test whether he freely chooses to be thankful or unthankful to God, his Lord. Verse 4 categorically tells man that the unbelievers will be subjected to a terrible end in the hereafter. Verses 5 to 22 spell out one after the other that bounties will be conferred on the believers who have been thankful to their Lord. Not only is their reward mentioned, but it is also clarified which acts will entitle them to divine reward. One of the striking features of the early Makkan surahs is that these introduce the basic articles of Islamic faith and concepts, and also the moral values on which Islam places a premium. Moreover, they identify the vices that Islam wants man to shun. The consequences of these virtues and vices in this life are not discussed. Rather, the focus of attention is on their impact in the afterlife. 3 important points are brought to the Prophet's attention in the next section of the surah. The first one is that God has revealed the Quran to him in brief portions. The unbelievers are thus told that the Quran is not the product of the Prophet's mind. Of His infinite wisdom, God has decided to send down the Quran piecemeal. Another truth imparted to the Prophet, peace be upon him, is that he should keep discharging his duty, no matter how it long takes to enforce God's decree. He should persevere with his mission and should never yield to the unbelievers. The last point pressed home is that the Prophet, peace be upon him, should glorify God morning and evening, offer prayers, and worship Him during the long watches of the night. This will bless him with steadfastness in confronting the unbelievers' recalcitrance. The unbelievers are guilty of having disregarded the hereafter, and they are only after the joys of this world. They are reminded that it is God who has created them. They are not there by their own will and power. They owe their handsome, strong bodies to Him, and so He is able to do with them as He wishes. He may disfigure them or replace them with another community after destroying them. With His power, He can recreate them in any other form. The concluding verses state that the Quran stands out as an exhortation. Whoever wills may find a way to his Lord. However, man's willingness shall be of no avail until God Himself wills it. He decides things out of His knowledge and wisdom. He admits to His mercy whomsoever He pleases, and He has prepared a grievous chastisement for the wrongdoers.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate.
هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا.
Was there a period of time when man was not even worthy of a mention?
1. Most of the commentators and translators have taken hal in the first sentence hal ada al insanai, in the meaning of Q80. Accordingly, they interpret this sentence to mean, no doubt, there has indeed passed on man a time. But in fact, the word hal in Arabic is used only as an interrogative particle, and its object is not to ask a question in every case, but this apparently interrogative particle is used in different meanings on different occasions. For example, sometimes, in order to find out whether a certain incident has taken place or not, we ask, has this thing happened? Sometimes, we do not mean to ask a question but to deny something and we express the denial thus. Can any other also do this? Sometimes we want somebody to affirm something and so ask him, have I paid what was due to you? And sometimes, we do not intend to have something just affirmed but we put a question in order to make the addressee pay particular attention to something which follows his affirmation as a sequel. For example, we ask someone, have I harmed you in any way? The object is not only to make him affirm that one has not done him any harm, but also to make him think how far one is justified to harm somebody who has not harmed him in any way. The interrogative sentence in the verse before us illustrates this last meaning. The object is not only to make man affirm that there has indeed passed on him such a time, but also to make him think that the God who developed and shaped him into a perfect man from an insignificant, humble beginning, would not be helpless to create him once again. In the second sentence, in Ad-Dahr, the word dar implies the endless time, the beginning and end of which are unknown to man, and this is the particular period of time which might at some time have passed during this endless period. What is meant to be said is that in this immensely long span of time there has passed a long period when human race was altogether non-existent. Then a time came in it when a species called man was created, and in the same period a time has passed on every person when a beginning was made to bring him into existence from nothingness. The third sentence, when he was not a thing, even to be mentioned, implies that a part of him existed in the form of a microscopic gene in the sperm drop of the father, and a part in the form of a microscopic ovum in the mother. For long ages man did not even know that he comes into being when the sperm gene and the ovum combined. Now both have been observed by means of powerful microscopes, but even now no one can say how much of man exists in the father's sperm, and how much in the mother's ovum. Then, the initial cell that comes into being by the combination of the two at the time of conception is such an insignificant thing that it can be seen only through highly powerful microscopes, and seeing it also no one at first sight can claim that it is a man taking shape, nor that even if a man emerges from this humble beginning, what will be his size and stature, what will be his form and figure, and what will be his capabilities and personality like. This is the meaning of the sentence that at that time he was not yet a thing worthy of any mention, although a beginning of his being as a man had been made.
إِنَّا خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِن نُّطْفَةٍ أَمْشَاجٍ نَّبْتَلِيهِ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ سَمِيعًا بَصِيرًا.
Verily, we created man out of a drop of intermingled sperm, so that we might try him, and we therefore endowed him with hearing and sight.
2. From a mixed sperm drop. From the intermingling of the male sperm with the female ovum and not separately from the sperm, or the ovum. During sexual intercourse, normally 200 to 500 million sperms are deposited into the female birth canal. The sperms swim and reach site of mixing with ovum in 4 to 6 hours on an average time. Most of the sperms are lost in this journey. Chemical changes occur during this travel and sperms remove their protective covering from their heads while getting ready to release special chemicals from the heads in their attempts and preparation to penetrate into the ovum. Usually, only one sperm is allowed to fuse and mix with the ovum. Ref. Maternity and Gynecology Care. Mosby Yearbook Publishing Inc. St. Louis, Missouri, USA, Chapter 7, page 162. 3. This shows man's real position in the world and the position of the world for man. He is not like the trees and animals that the object of his creation be fulfilled on the earth itself, and he should die and perish here after he has played his appointed role over a period of time according to the law of nature. Furthermore, this world is neither a place of punishment for him, as the monks think, nor a place of rewards as the believers of the law of transmigration think, nor a place of entertainment and enjoyment, as the materialists think, nor a battlefield, as the followers of atheists think, but in fact it is a place of test and trial for him. That which he regards as his age is in fact the time given to him for the test. Whatever powers and capabilities he has been given in the world, the things that have been placed under his control and authority, the various positions and capacities in which he functions, and the relationships that he enjoys with other people, all these are the countless manners of the test, and this test continues till the last breath of his life. The result is not to be announced in this world but in the hereafter, when all his answer books will have been assessed. Decision will be given whether he has come out successful or failed, and his success or failure wholly depends on what he thought of himself while he functioned here and how he answered the questions that were given to him here. If he believed that he had no God, or that he was the slave of many gods, and while answering the questions he thought that he was not to be held accountable before his Creator in the hereafter, his whole life work went wrong. And if he regarded himself as the slave of one God and worked in the way approved by God, with the accountability of the hereafter always in view, he stood successful in the test. This theme has occurred at many places in the Quran. 4. The words Sami, hearing, and Basar, seeing, in the original text actually imply being sensible and intelligent. These words of the Arabic language are never used in respect of the animal, although it also hears and sees. Thus, hearing and seeing here do not imply the powers of hearing and seeing which have been given to the animals too, but those means through which man obtains knowledge and then draws conclusions from it. Besides, since hearing and seeing are among the most important means of knowledge for man, only these two have been mentioned briefly. Otherwise it actually implies giving man all those senses of the body by which he gathers information. Then the senses given to man are quite different in their nature from those given to animals, for at the back of every sense he has a thinking brain, which collects information gained through the senses, arranges it, draws conclusions from it, forms opinions, and then takes some decisions which become the basis of his attitude and conduct in life. Hence, after saying, "We created man in order to try him," to say, "Therefore, we made him capable of hearing and seeing," actually contains the meaning that Allah gave him the faculties of knowledge and reason to enable him to take the test. Obviously, if this were not the meaning, and the meaning of making man hearing and seeing just implied the one who could hear and see, then a blind and deaf person would stand exempted from the test, whereas unless a person is utterly devoid of knowledge and reason, there can be no question of his being exempted from the test.
إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلَ إِمَّا شَاكِرًا وَإِمَّا كَفُورًا.
Surely, we showed him the right path, regardless of whether he chooses to be thankful or unthankful to his Lord.
5. That is, we did not just leave him to himself after giving him the powers of knowledge and reason, but we also guided him so that he knows which is the path of gratefulness and which of ungratefulness, so that whichever path he chooses in his later life, he himself is responsible for it. In Surah Al-Balad, the same subject has been expressed, thus, "And we showed him both the conspicuous ways, of good and evil," and in Surah Ash-Shams, thus by the human self, and by him who balanced it, with all the external and internal powers, then inspired it with its wickedness and its piety. When all these explanations are kept in view, and also those detailed statements of the Quran in which it has been stated what arrangements Allah has made for man's guidance in the world, it becomes evident that in this verse, "We guided him to the way" does not imply any one form of guidance but many forms of it which are limitless and countless. For example, 1. Along with the faculties of knowledge and reason, man has also been endowed with a moral sense by which he discerns between good and evil, regards some acts and qualities as evil even if he himself is involved in them, and regards some other acts and qualities as good even if he himself is avoiding them. So much so that even those people who for the satisfaction of their selfish motives and desires have invented philosophies by which they have justified many evils for themselves, protest loudly when they are themselves treated with the same evils by others, and then it becomes known that in spite of their false philosophies they actually regard them as evil. Likewise, when a man himself is benefited by a good treatment from another person, he is from within forced to commend and appreciate it, even though he might be looking upon good acts and qualities as ignorance, folly, and antiquated things. 2. In every man Allah has placed the faculty of conscience, the lawama, which checks and pricks him every time he is about to commit an evil, or is in the process of committing it, or has already committed it. However hard man may try to silence his conscience, or make it insensitive, he does not have the power to destroy it completely. He may become shameless and prove himself to be absolutely devoid of the conscience. He may also try to deceive the world by argumentation. He may even invent 1,000 excuses to justify his acts in order to deceive himself. But despite all this, the censor that Allah has placed in his nature is so active and powerful that it does not let remain hidden from an evil person what he actually is. This same thing has been stated in Surah Al-Qiyamah thus: man knows his own self best even though he may offer many excuses. Ayat 15. 3. In man's own self and outside of him, from the earth to the heavens, there lie scattered in the universe countless such signs which clearly show that all this could not happen without a God, nor could there be many gods to create this life and control and administer it. Likewise, these very signs, inside man and outside him, clearly point also to the resurrection and hereafter. If man shuts down his eyes on them, or refuses to ponder over them intelligently, or avoids to admit the truths which they point out, he himself would be to blame. For Allah has shown no negligence in laying out every possible sign of the truth for the guidance of man. 4. Man does come across in his own life, and in the contemporary world and in the experiences of past history, countless such incidents which prove that a supreme power is ruling over him and the entire universe, before whom he is absolutely powerless, whose will is dominant over everything and whose help he needs at every moment. These experiences and observations which point to the truth do not exist only outside him, but in man's own nature as well. There exists the evidence of the existence of the supreme power, on the basis of which even the most confirmed atheist spreads out his hands in prayer before God when in distress, and the most hardened polytheist abandons all false gods and starts invoking one God only for help. 5. Man's intellect and his nature assert positively that crime ought to be punished and good deeds ought to be rewarded. On this very basis, in every society of the world a system of the courts is established in one form or another. The services and works, which are regarded as commendable, are also rewarded in one way or another. This is a clear proof of the fact that there is a necessary relationship between morality and the law of retribution, which man cannot possibly deny. Now, if it is admitted that in this world there are countless such crimes which cannot be punished at all, to say nothing of punishing them fully and adequately, and there are also countless such virtues which cannot be rewarded at all, to say nothing of rewarding them fully and adequately, there is no alternative but to acknowledge the hereafter, unless, of course, a foolish person may assume, or a stubborn person may insist on having the opinion, that man who has been endowed with the concept of justice has taken birth in a world which in itself is devoid of the concept of justice, and then it remains for him to answer the question as to how and where from this man, who was born in such a world, obtained this concept of justice. To reinforce these means of guidance, Allah sent messengers and revealed books in the world for the purpose of giving clear and definite guidance to man. In these books it was clearly explained what is the way of gratefulness, and what is the way of ungratefulness and unbelief, and what will be the consequences of following either way. The teaching brought by the prophets and the books has spread throughout the world in countless perceptible and imperceptible ways, on such a large scale that no section of human population has remained unaware of the concept of God and the hereafter, of the distinction between good and evil, and of the moral principles and legal rulings presented by them. Whether it knows or does not know that it has obtained this knowledge only through the teachings of the prophets and the books they brought. Even those who disbelieve in the prophets and the books today, or are unaware of them, also are following many of those things which have reached to them actually through their teachings, while they do not know what is the real source of these teachings.